G'day guys, ZiggyD here. Over the past several days I've been doing a ton of theory crafting for the upcoming Prophecy League, trying to figure out what would be some of the best starter builds, and I've settled upon two that I'm going to share with you guys here. You guys are struggling to come up with a build that you want to get started in the league, farm up some currency, something that's going to be really easy to gear, something that's going to be fast, clear speed, good to get into mapping and start building up that currency so you can start funding some of those fun and unique builds that Ascendancy has brought us. So, both of these are Elementalist, and why exactly is that? Well, with the Chaos Conversion nerfs, the buff to Paragon of Calamity, which gives you reduced reflect damage taken, 50% reduced reflect damage taken, and then for a subsequent hits an extra 8% reduced reflect damage taken, is very, very potent. So one of the big strengths of Chaos Conversion was the ability to become immune or resistant to reflect, and this does much the same thing. So taken away from us with one hand, but given back to us with another. Another thing that Elementalist does really good is clear speed. You get heaps of damage from Shaper of Desolation through shocks, and then in some cases you can use Beacon of Ruin to proliferate big burns as well, and proliferate those shocks as well. And then you get Pendulum of Destruction, giving you a massive amount of AoE and a good chunk of damage as well. So Elementalist is just a really solid starting point for a lot of skills. In fact, there's kind of a bit of a meme going around where you take any skill and add Elementalist to it and you make it viable or even strong. And if you take a skill that's already really good, like Firestorm or Flameblast, then you make it even better. So the two builds I'm going to be sharing here are an Elementalist Firestorm and an Elementalist Flameblaster, and both of these have very little gear requirements. In fact, neither of them requires any specific gear. They can use gear to enhance themselves, but they can start off with just your basic rares that you find and buy while leveling, and you're going to be able to do really well with them. Both of these have been proven very well in the previous leagues, and they're only better this league around, so we're not really working from nothing here. This has all been well tested. So first up, and this is my favorite, we have the Elementalist Firestorm build. Firestorm is a skill that rain downs fire in a pretty large area of effect, and it has the benefits of having very good area of effect clear speed, so you clear through packs pretty easy. You coat the screen in Firestorms. Scaling up your duration allows the Firestorms to continue raining down for a very long time, so we get potency of will down here, and stacking cast speed in addition to duration allows you to continue to rain Firestorms on the one location, and they keep stacking up in damage. You get this real big ramp up in damage, which means that Firestorm also has excellent single target. So great AoE clear speed, excellent single target, supported by Elementalist Proliferation, Ele Conflux. You get a very powerful setup just here. So the skill tree is fairly basic. We managed to get just under 200 life, which is obviously a very good amount. Both of these builds are strong for hardcore and will also work really well in softcore as well. Of course, if you're playing softcore, you can choose to drop some life nodes wherever you like and scale those into extra damage, like the cast speed damage here in Shadow, for example, or going up into the fire nodes here above, which you have that option if you want to make it a little less sturdy, a little less tanky, and add a little bit more damage, but not really necessary. You're going to get great damage for even high level maps with both of these setups. So of course we do come out of the witch area here and head up into the AoE. We'll be getting both AoE clusters with both of these builds because that AoE is what gives you that clear speed. And then of course we'll be getting just tons of good life scattered around the tree, all the good life clusters around here, including down over on Templar, down to the Scion life wheel on the Firestorm, and into the Shadow life over here as well. We get a lot of cast speed in this build too, including nimbleness and mental rapidity, which allows you to really stack up those Firestorms, as well as giving you really nice quality of life for clear speed. You get to kind of shoot and scoot a lot more effectively because of that. Elemental Overload will be procced easily by Firestorm because it hits so often, you're casting so much of it around the place. You're going to get those Elemental Overload procs very easily, and it's going to be up a lot of the time, which means 40% more elemental damage most of the time. Works really nicely. In addition to the actual AoE nodes, but as this is a fire skill, we can also get the really nice explosive impact, pretty solid damage cluster, but with that extra 5% radius as well, really, really nice. Now Firestorm is a little mana hungry. Clearing should be just fine with things like Righteous Decree, the mana regen over here, mana regen in here, and Deep Thoughts. This should get you pretty much covered for your regular clearing. However, boss kills where you're really stacking it up and casting on the same spot, especially if you're using something like Vile Haste, that can be supported with Vile Clarity. So when you encounter a boss, you pop your Vile Haste and your Vile Clarity with increased duration at the same time, and you just rain down fiery death until the boss melts. Refer to the left side of the screen here for all of your links, but for movement for this build you have two options: Whirling Blades with faster attacks and Fortify if you get yourself a decent cast speed, damage, spell damage dagger, or if you find a decent wand instead, you can use Flame Dash and faster casting. Whirling Blades has been nerfed a little bit, it's now a little slower, but it's still very good because you can get that Fortify as well, and with faster attacks it's still a pretty fast movement skill even with that nerf. However, Flame Dash and getting a really good wand, especially with the wand spell damage buffs, wands get up to something like 40% spell damage now, that's also a really attractive option, so you can go either which one of those you prefer. For auras, you'll be using Blasphemy, Enfeeble, or if you're really struggling for mana, you're not quite able to keep that mana up while clearing, you can use Blasphemy, Warlord's Mark instead, which will give you that mana and life leech. So that's a really nice survivability option, though Enfeeble overall is the defensive curse. Now, though Enfeeble was nerfed ever so slightly, it was only the crit damage that was nerfed on it, and it still reduces enemies' accuracy, crit chance, and the actual damage they deal. It's still an insanely strong defensive curse. As I said, for gear, there's no real specific gear items here that are essential, but you can use the chest Carcass Jack. It gives you damage and increased area of effect, really nice for clear speed. Of course, if you're in hardcore, you can use one of the defensive chests if you want instead, like Lightning Coil, for example, though you'll have a bit of trouble getting the right socket colors on that. Carcass Jack is going to be much easier. And then for your regular gear, you're just going to use stuff like, high life, high resistance rares, whatever you can find, and the Series Promise Flask is really nice for damage scaling and for giving you a good chunk of leech as well. In terms of travel order for the tree, you're going to head out here. You can grab Firewalker. Don't be afraid to grab Lightning Walker and Frostwalker while leveling, just for the resistances. It can make leveling on those first couple days really easy. You're going to come up here and grab the life, go up through the AoE cluster, grab this life as you head on through, grab Elemental Overload while leveling. It's great while leveling. You can drop Orb of Storms while leveling and have a really nice time with that. Head through here, grab the life, go down into the AoE Templar cluster, start to fill out this main section of the Templar here. Leave this for a little later on. Then you're going to want to come down and get the duration, some life from over here, head into Shadow, and then fill out whatever you're missing. In terms of the Elementalist Ascendancy nodes, you'll be getting Shaper of Desolation first, and then probably Pendulum of Destruction or Beacon of Ruin. Either one of these are fine. You'll leave one of these for last, as in your final endgame 2 points from in maps, but you'll want to get Paragon of Calamity and Merciless to give you that nice defensive bonus, and also, of course, that reflect resistance, so you're able to run those early reflect maps without worrying. So you'll probably get all three of these, or all three of these, and then whichever one you haven't got, you can get last once you get to the endgame labyrinthine maps. Now, if instead of raining down fiery death you prefer to one-shot things, then Flameblast is probably going to be your jam. This also is going to be really, really strong here. As you can see, another build that gets almost 200 life, so very defensively strong, and the trees are very similar. Rather than going down into the Scion life and getting the duration, because duration is no good for Flameblast, we instead head over and take advantage of some of the other nodes in Shadow, and we still manage to get a very high life total. We of course get all of those AoE scaling, and cast speed is also very important for Flameblast, because the faster you get to those 10 stacks, the more damage you're going to be dealing. So we'll also be getting the cast speed nodes here at Nimbleness and Mental Rapidity, and you can also get the cast speed at the start of Shadow as well. For this build, however, rather than using Beacon of Ruin, you're actually going to use Elemental Proliferation. Now, we get those guaranteed ignites from Shaper of Desolation's Ellie Conflux, but the thing about Flameblast is that it hits incredibly hard. It's one of the hardest hitting skills in the game when it's stacked up. That means you get massive ignites, and because it's a big hit hard, hit once style skill, ignites don't stack like Poison does. Ignites instead, you want to be a big single hit, and we want to really take advantage of that. So we use Elemental Proliferation. Now, the advantage of using this over the Ascendancy is that it has higher base area of effect, and because it's a gem rather than this kind of like secondary effect here, it can also be scaled with area of effect increases, which we get a lot of. So you get a lot of Elemental Proliferation area of effect. You drop a 10 stack Flame Blast on a pack of enemies, and it will proliferate across most of the screen, so you can get really powerful clear speed and also proliferate those really, really incredibly powerful ignites around the screen as well. So because we're not getting Beacon of Ruin, we're instead going to be getting Mastermind of Discord. Now, where this didn't work so well in the Firestorm build, it does work really well in the Flameblast build, because you can instead use Lightning Warp with less duration, fast casting, and potentially Rapid Decay if you get a falling for it. And this gives you 25% fire penetration, which allows that big single hit to hit even harder, especially against high resistance enemies. That combined with fire penetration on the actual main links there means that you're going to be doing huge amounts of damage regardless of the enemy resistances, even in high resistance maps as well. Now, of course, Paragon of Calamity is essentially important for Flameblast because Reflect with Flameblast is actually incredibly scary, and this gives you 50% there. You're still going to have to be a little careful in early Reflect maps, and in early Reflect maps you can do things like run Rise of the Phoenix and swap out one of your auras for Purity of Fire instead. I recommend if you're running Blasphemy and Feeble as your cursed setup, then you'll be running Anger in regular maps and swapping to Purity of Fire in Reflect maps. This will give you pretty good resistance to Reflect, and you can, of course, against big packs, pop a Ruby Flask as well to ensure that you'll stay alive. Still be careful though, and I wouldn't go around 10 stacking things. Because of the proliferation, you can actually just do like a 3 or 4 stack in an early Reflect map and still proliferate pretty nice burns around killing most things. So you can run Elemental Reflect maps with this build, but it's a little more dangerous than the Firestorm build, for example. However, Paragon of Calamity makes that much safer. The strategy for this tree is much the same as the Firestorm build. Head up this way, don't be afraid to grab Lightning and Frostwalker for resistances. Come out and grab the life, grab the AoE, grab the life nodes, get the Elemental Overload. Not a bad idea to get Mental Rapidity here as well. Come down through into the AoE for Templar. Head over into the Shadow area, picking up all the life along the way, and then fill out whatever you're missing. Pretty simple stuff. It's a very, like, you can't really go wrong with this build. I just recommend going for Elemental Overload and Templar first. That AoE and the extra damage here is more impactful for leveling than going over to Shadow, for example. That's more helpful in the late game. It's not as good as the Templar section. Recommended gear setup, again, Carcass Jack is a great choice for chest. Gives you that extra AoE, also affects your proliferation and all that jazz. Rise of the Phoenix, very solid defensive option, allows you to not worry about resistances in early Reflect maps. It allows you to be more resistant to that Elemental Reflect. You can swap that shield out for another wand, like another damage wand or another shield perhaps. When you're not running early Reflect maps, it's not necessary to run that in non-early Reflect maps, but be careful of early Reflect rares, because even a 10 stacking a single target with Reflect on it can actually be pretty dangerous, so watch out for that. For wands, you're going to want high cast speed above all else, but added fire damage and things like that is going to work really well. Because of the way the multipliers work on the increasing stacks of Flameblast, added fire damage is going to work really well. So guys, pretty simple stuff. Simple, sturdy is what you want at the start of a league, and hopefully this guide is, is going to get you started and earning a bunch of currency to fund some of those more kind of like advanced and complicated builds. Though these two builds are going to be able to do all content, so they're pretty good either way. Whether you wanted them just as a starter to farm currency or something that you're going to go really ham on and get to a high level, good choices for either. Elementalist is really, really strong, and Firestorm and Flameblast are looking really, really strong as well. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. That is it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.